first few times I climbed, I'd gone to buy my groceries after that. And just lifting the grocery bag was like, what is going on with my forearms? Like I've not felt this before ever. So
I
I think that like constant, spark of something new that's happening in your body was just so exciting. And
Yeah.
then suddenly there was like a line popping up in my forearm. I'm like, oh my God, there's something going on here.
Hi everyone, this is Vrinda Bhagaria, and I'm like a huge fan of her. I think I met her for the first time in January of 2019. What do you do and why do you do it?
So currently I run a climbing center called BoulderBox in New Delhi. And this has been going on for the last year now. Before that, I was climbing recreationally. I mean, I still do. I don't call myself a professional climber because that's not what I make money off of. And previously to that, I was working as a graphic designer for several years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You went from like graphic designing to starting your own climbing gym in Delhi, which I think is probably one of the first gyms in India of this magnitude and this size. So wasn't it like scary for you to like get started on it? Like, how did you think that I'm going to do this?
It was extremely scary to be honest. I think the fear was like, should I convert something that I'm so passionate about into something that becomes a profession? Because then it runs the risk of not holding the same place for you. Um, but I was stuck in a situation where even design was not giving me any joy at all. Um, I don't know what it was, whether it's the work culture or the long hours, not, being able to have time to climb to myself when I'm doing a design job was just something that really irked me throughout um, those several years. And because of that, I kind of took a few years off in between, which left me super perplexed because I'm like quitting jobs just because I want to keep climbing. um, and I'm like, how do I do this professionally, or like in a way that I can continue to climb and sustain somehow.
Yeah.
So I think somewhere in 2015 or 14 I started looking at several climbing gyms that were popping up in the US and Europe. And in 2016, I made a trip to Germany where I kind of walked around, like just hopped around several different bouldering centers
Mhm.
to understand the scale, the setup that they have, um, all of that, and spoke to a bunch of people who run it.
Yeah.
So, just seeing that it was a booming industry in other countries sort of solidified that need for space over here as well, along with the fact that Yadu has a wall at his place and we would climb over there. And over the years, the number of people, like he was still in university, so I was using the wall more than he was. And we grew from a group of like 3 to 4 people who'd be climbing there regularly to about 20 people who wanted to climb there. So it was obvious that there was a need for a space for climbers.
Yeah, no, I think your journey was like so parallel to mine in some ways because I moved to India and I didn't want it to do the kind of job I was doing. It was like, I think, paying the bills and it was also pretty satisfactory, but then it wasn't leaving time to really do what I wanted to do. Right. And at some point it became like, okay, I need to like just, sometimes you have to create your own organization to just do what you want to do. And it's a risk and it's a fear. And just like probably you had like your cousin, my brother was just like, let's do this. Can we sit and code on our dining table? And then this happened. And now there are like so many people who are part of our journey of like, not like bouldering, but it's like sort of virtual bouldering, like, trying to figure
Mhm.
out. But that element of like having a problem and then
Yeah.
trying to crack that problem and all the muscles that you develop in that process, it's just so incredible. So what I want to ask is like, how did you get sucked into climbing? I mean, it's not the most regular sport, and I mean, you've been climbing for many years. What changed in you?
So I got introduced to the sport in my final semester of college, actually. I came across climbing through this gym that I used to go to. This one just so happened to have a climbing wall right next to the squash court.
Yeah.
So I had no idea what climbing was, or was I even up for something of that sort. But just because it was so accessible for me,
Yeah.
um, every time I wouldn't find a partner to play squash, I'd kind of just look at people who would climb. I wouldn't even climb, I'd just look at them. And I think that was what sort of initiated me into the sport, because they would just look so graceful,
Yeah.
I always compared it to like ballerinas on a wall. Watching them was just such a pleasure.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I think want to try, I want to try this. I gave it a go, and I was not nearly as graceful.
Yeah.
I think that aspect of making something so challenging and creative look so effortless was kind of what really got my curiosity.
My manager in one of my jobs when I was like 22 took me to my first yoga studio. In my first class, I couldn't tell my hand apart from my feet. I felt like a monkey in the class. I was like, everybody around me is moving so effortlessly and so beautiful. But then, like, I don't know that journey, like, going from being a monkey to like a graceful ballerina is just so beautiful and
Mm.
super challenging. So I know you must have changed like quite a lot, like physically. So did you
Yeah.
have those moments of like recognizing how strong you were and that sort of changing just like how you were thinking about things?
When I started, I was not strong at all, to be honest. Climbing, in a sense, I think became like this driving factor to become extremely fit versus just looking thin or being skinny.
Yeah.
Because earlier I think that was the motivation. I was always mocked at as a kid. I was the fat one in the class, essentially. Um, but it was a super interesting journey, because I remember the first few times I climbed, I'd gone to buy my groceries after that, and just lifting the grocery bag was like, what is going on with my forearms? Like, I've not felt this before ever.
I,
So I think that, like, constant spark of something new that's happening in your body was just so exciting. And
yeah.
then suddenly there was like a line popping up in my forearm. I'm like, oh my god, there's something going on here.
You know.
So yeah, I think the physical aspect was definitely a motivating factor as well. The visual aspect and the mentally challenging part of it, like trying to figure problems out, like you said. And it's so unique for every individual, right?
Yeah.
So over the years, I think it kind of overtook a lot of things in my life, just because it became pretty much the only thing that gave me joy. um, I've kind of always had this question about what is the purpose of life, and what are you truly meant to be doing, or
Mhm.
what is it that makes it worthy for you, right? And I think over time I realized that if there's something as small as getting to the next hold that can be so obsessive for me, then maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
I enjoy the pleasure in understanding details and taking your time to go through things step by step. So yeah, that's kind of how.
I've noticed this one thing about you specifically, and about a lot of my friends who got sucked into sports, especially as we grew older, was that tended to become much less materialistic and also like everybody just like goes to the same place and spends all of their time doing the same thing. You have no time to like go and spend money. So like, did that happen? Like, and did you start to become like different from a lot of other people who were not climbing over the years?
um I don't think I have ever been super materialistic. Like, I definitely do enjoy living in comfort, but beyond that, I don't particularly see myself indulging in luxury. But having said that, I think your priorities kind of shift, um, and the things that occupy your mind space kind of shift. So because you're obsessing over a move, or because you're obsessing over how many max weight pull-ups can I do, and that becomes something that's a goal versus, okay, I need this dress or I need this bag. I've never been a bag or dress or shoes kind of person in any case.
I think I sort of had that phase because so I was always a skinny girl. I don't know, like all the skinny girls I think get pushed into fashion somehow by the by the virtue of the world. So I got pushed into fashion. I bought a lot of stupid clothes and stupid shoes and a lot of makeup and like went through that phase. And none of it like either made me happy or made me feel beautiful in any way, shape, or form, like exceptionally. And it was so much like not just waste of money, but like, you look back and you're like, wait a minute, that was waste of resources, like material that went into it, like plastic, clothes, water, so much thing. I think I took a pledge in like early 2019 that okay, I'm not going to buy any clothes, and it's just been completely fine.
In India is such so beautiful in that sense. Like it doesn't always distinguish who has access to sport, or at least in climbing that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
So you have friends from all kinds of places and all kinds of backgrounds, and I think that kind of a reality check is extremely important. It forces you to be a bit more aware and mindful of your decisions.
That's absolutely true. The last 5-7 years of going in sports, where the common thing that you obsess about has nothing to do with like education or money or social background or something, and
Yeah.
and the bonds that you kind of form are much more deeper because I feel like you're valuing things. You have a common value system, and that's
Yeah,
sort of
and
yeah.
you value skill over something that you can,
Yeah.
than money.
So I have a question, which is, what would you like to like say to younger girls, like somebody who's like 10 years old and is like scared, or somebody who's like 15 years old and is like skinny and has never picked up a dumbbell, like, oh my god, I can't do that. What would you want? Because I think there is a serious sense of inhibition that we have in our culture in the girls. I have
Yeah.
a lot of inhibitions, like much more compared to, let's say, my brother or any other guy on the street. There is
Yeah.
something which is very limiting internally. I don't know, I can't word it out right now, but I've just like seen that is true. And it is an internal struggle that we have to like get over with, and that internal struggle sometimes is for sports. So how do you
Mhm.
want to get like more girls into BoulderBox?
I think I would recommend everyone to try it. There's no harm in trying something new, something different. Hesitations have their place, but without trying or without being aware, you're not making an informed decision. And I think having the knowledge to make a choice is better than not making it just because you're hesitant.
That was such a nice sentence. Okay, so the next question is, what is it like being entrepreneur and being founder of BoulderBox like?
I think the scariest thing for me is having a good team and managing them well. Most of them are also friends. Um,
Yeah.
the pool of climbers in this country is significantly small, and then to have the right skill set to work with other people is even smaller. So that's my biggest fear, I would say. And to grow something like this, you need more people. So the idea is to grow the community, get more climbers. It's also a sport that has evolved me as a person, changed me in many ways, and I want people to experience that for themselves. And I've already seen a lot of people have that like complete shift, uh, from coming into BoulderBox, having never heard of what bouldering is, to now being completely dedicated to the sport. It's just so amazing to see that. Um, so that is definitely a big fear. But other than that, I think the other thing that I'm scared of is that I really, personally, I love climbing, and I would hate for the center or running climbing as a business to take that away from me as a passion. So that's something I constantly try to be mindful of.
Yeah.
I don't like being in the space constantly all the time because it's overwhelming. It becomes your workspace, it becomes your training space.
Yeah.
It took a lot of joy away from me in the first year. I was just hyper stressed all the time, like, oh my god, this is not done, oh my god, that's not done. I was like constantly watching people, are they going to fall badly, is this going to happen. But you just have to like step away and let things happen sometimes, and also have your peace of mind.
So, so you're the boss lady in BoulderBox, right?
I mean, I'm the only one who's in it.
Yeah.
There is no other woman right now. So
So do you feel like, and this is like such a sort of masculine sport, like, so to speak, essentially. It's not exactly, you're not in like makeup or fashion, you're running an extreme sport gym. And most of your employees, I think, are guys, right?
all of them, yeah.
So how do you feel like, managing all the guys? And does that gender conflict play for you sometimes?
As of recently, at least, I found myself struggling with it. So I do end up having to ask Yadu to take on a bunch of the communication because I'm just at a loss of words. I'm not sure what will, you know, actually stick to these guys. I
This
don't
really
know yet.
happened. Somebody in my team recently said that I am the first female boss he has ever had. And I was like, wait, that is so crazy because like not a lot of people have had a female manager. So even on the boys' side, because there have been such relatively few figures of authorities which were female, like we both the genders have to figure out like this like management style, like like how do we
Yeah.
listen to each other. Okay, so the next question is that what is your ideal world in 15 years from now, and from the perspective of like climbing?
Far as sports is concerned, I think if there's a lot of people who train for the sake of training, like fitness becomes their sport, which I don't necessarily understand. Like, it's great to be fit, but the drive and the motivation that a sport brings is far greater. So I wish for everyone to at some point be able to have that passion towards that one singular thing.
Yeah.
It really kind of narrows, broadens your perspective, but also narrows down mm, like moments when you have to kind of run away from things.
Yeah. I feel like sports could be a way that could save us from ourselves, because it sort of makes us a little better version of ourselves. And especially when fitness is not for the sake of fitness, when sports is
Mhm.
not for the sake, because that is a fairly like terrible route to go into. And especially, the traditional sports businesses, the way they do it, the chains and the whole apps and the chains and the clothes, that whole saga, it erodes all of the value system out of that sport and makes it that sole product of capitalism that you kind of don't want it to be. But
Yeah.
maybe in a different format, it could be something that, and that I saw a little more in the US, like not in India, that a lot of my friends on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, were not consuming too much, were actually interacting more with the nature, were getting on a bicycle and biking for 100 miles, and those habits, like, step by step, day by day, were leading to like much more personally sustainable lifestyle than like, an alternative lifestyle. Like, even for us, let's say, instead of going to a mall and buying stuff, or like, driving around in your car, you're
Mhm.
going and like, you're rolling out in a park trying to figure out like a move. It's like one single day that where you did not produce carbon, where you
Yeah,
did not produce waste, where you did
true.
something that was like, carbon neutral for a change.
Yeah.
And if more and more people were to do it, um, and the second thing I feel is very big, that especially in the India as a middle income country, and all of us as very young people, there is an aspirational thing. So people want
Hmm.
to aspire to
Yeah.
wealth. People want to aspire to have a car and a house, and thanks to Instagram and all the fashion bloggers, lots and lots of clothes.
But this brings me back to that same question of women feeling empowered and like advice to young women, because you're so confident in your own abilities and what you're doing. You're not looking for appreciation through things like how you dress or how you look. And that's far more long term. it's
Yeah.
it's never going to go away from you.
But that appreciation comes because I'm part of this community, right? Which
Yeah.
values different things. Like if I was to never meet people from sports, then I would be a different person altogether, right? Then I would be
Hmm.
the person who will wear heels and dress and like lots of
Hmm.
makeup and make my hair and then go for that meeting, rather than like, this other alternative. And that's where I feel like sports just changes you. It changes a community, it changes a person, it changes the preferences, and it changes the outlook.
There's this really interesting NGO called Climb Aid, they kind of drive around this truck which has a climbing wall built around it
Yeah.
to these poverty-stricken areas of Lebanon and help in dealing with things like depression and kids who've suffered through trauma,
Yeah.
um, helping them come out of it through the medium of climbing as a sport and bringing in some kind of unity or like a unifying ground for girl kids and boy kids,
Yeah.
um, so that they can interact as equals versus like always having segregation.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so I
such
think in that sense, like climbing or any sport can also play a huge role in terms of dealing with depression or any kind of like um, trauma that one has been through in their life.
yeah. That's such a good way to actually end this, and like one of the best sentences, because maybe if the overall sports community in India was to come together and work towards rural communities and other low income blocks, it could potentially in future like help us recover from the trauma that we're facing right now as a society, which is a freaking mad trauma. Like I don't know how will we ever recover from this. Like at an individual level, it's so deep for me. The anger, the angst, the depression, the financial, economic, but also like the mental depression that all of us will face. So maybe, in future, in 2022, 23, we could like go to the rural parts of like a climbing wall and have like kids and young people like try it out, do like, cycling events or like gigantic, like, 100, 200 people like yoga classes. Hopefully we'll be able to do too much of sport in the next, 10, 15 years and change the world.
Do let us know in the comments below what sports mean to you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.